Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Joy, Love, and Healing Podcast. I'm Jay Bradley, and super excited to have this conversation today. Oh, man, it's something that I've been working on, and I'm thrilled to share this. It's, this discussion around empowered feminine energy and kind of dealing with toxic masculine energy. But like, what does that mean as a man in the world? How do we navigate that? And it's something I've been working on, becoming more vulnerable, more open, more heart-centered. And I'm super excited to have Ben Bidwell here from London, UK, to have this discussion. We're just going to tell you a little bit about Ben before we begin. Ben Bidwell is a mindset and purpose coach, writer, and public speaker who is living his own purpose by inspiring others to achieve their deepest potential. Having been on his own journey from a masked man drawn to toxic behaviors to an unawakened and open soul, his story is deeply authentic and relatable. He is now seen as a pioneering a revolution to encourage society and men in particular to open up and connect more with their emotions in a powerful and liberating way. I love that. Hi, Ben.
Oh, Jay, thank you. Hi.
Thank you.
That was beautiful just to receive, so thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Now, we literally just met over Zoom a week or two ago, and I just felt this immediate connection with you. And, what I was so drawn to is your gentleness. And, some men might be like, well, that's not a compliment. But to me, that's the most powerful and beautiful energy a man can have, this sort of gentleness and centered energy. So thank you for being here and having this conversation.
Thank you, and thank you for seeing the gentleness in me. It's something that I repressed for a big part of my life. So it's a beautiful space for me to now not only allow myself to express that gentleness, but to be celebrated for that gentleness. So thank you for seeing it.
Well, can you share a little bit about that? Because you said repress, which to me means you were kind of holding on to some energy. What does that look like, and what did that look like in your life?
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of fun. It was heavy. So for me, I grew up with this perception around me from society that if I was to thrive as a man, I needed to be strong, tough, and brave. I looked, and what I saw was Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, Rambo, Terminator, James Bond. These were the men who were, they never lost. They were always tough. They might express some emotion, but it was never vulnerable emotion. It was a powerful emotion. And these were the men who were celebrated. And this is what I saw. And I had a lot of insecurity within myself at a young age. I never learned to really value myself. So I went looking for validation, and the way I saw validation occurring was trying my best to be like these men. My mum is a very soft, gentle, kind, compassionate woman. She's a nurse. She had a lot of sensitivity. She showed me that beauty all the way through. And I loved it in her, but I was never allowing myself to express it because I didn't think it was manly. It was the path for me to take. So that was the way I lived. And despite having this natural kindness within me, I put the mask on, as I say, and lived like that for 30 years and trying to be someone that I naturally wasn't. The way I saw it, it was cooler to be the bully than to be the one who was bullied.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't a bully, but that was the energy that I was trying to take on, be that person.
Yeah. And, this conversation, thank you for sharing. This conversation goes so much deeper than sexuality and gender. But it's interesting that we're having this conversation because, as a gay man, was bullied. I worked hard to not show any sort of feminine traits, to be a real man, so I wouldn't get beat up and bullied. And you're, a heterosexual man, I believe, and so it's interesting to get your approach because I guess that softness or gentleness or sort of balanced energy, like you said, has not always been looked at as a really masculine and manly trait. So you have been sharing this work with people, but with men in particular. And I'm curious how that is going and what sort of techniques and how you take men in particular through the process of, getting more connected with their heart and being more vulnerable.
Yeah, it's tough. It's hard. You ask the average man on the street, do you want to be open and vulnerable? And it's like, no, I want to be closed and protected. It's almost a natural reaction, isn't it? Why would I want to be vulnerable? And I would have had that reaction for most of my life. And even to the extent where someone said to me, can you allow your feminine energy to be more expressed? I would have been like, why would I want that? I'm a man, it's like all in on the masculine energy. That's who I am. That's what I'm about. I don't know what you're talking about. And there was just no space to receive or to consider allowing myself to be more feminine. So I know from my own experiences, there are immediate masks, there are immediate walls, there are immediate protective walls that men don't want to let in the feminine. The biggest fear that men have is being perceived as weak. And all these things that we've associated, or we've brought up so far, but there could be an element of weakness attributed to us if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. God, we're weak. That's an immediate association, and we'd rather stay strong and protected and disconnected than we would allow ourselves to be open and vulnerable, but alive inside and emotional and connected and build beautiful relationships. So it's very hard. So the first part, and I'm really aware of my own experience, that I only entered into this world. I only started going on this journey because of challenges I had around sex. And so for me, I thought I was going to learn to become some kind of sex guru. It wasn't because I wanted to learn to become open and vulnerable and emotional and more feminine. And if it had been presented to me that way, I would have said, I'm okay, thanks. It's not what I want to do. I want to connect more, have a better, more fulfilling sex life. So in terms of working with men and helping them go on this journey, I know that it's difficult to begin with, and it's to not shame or not to blame or to make them wrong in where they're at, but just for me to own my space, to be able to allow them to see that it's okay, you can still be strong and emotional, you can still be kind and tough, you can still be all these contrasts that are possible, without stripping away the masculinity. You can still be a leader, but inspire and empower others, or not inspire, empower other people. We can be all these contrasts. So my message to men is very much like, I'm not trying to take anything away from you. I just want to empower you to have more of what's possible, which is ultimately, I wouldn't say this, but is the feminine energy, and which is missing for so many. We live in a masculine-led world. It's do. It's not about what you be, it's about what you do. So, be careful with the terminology. I'm careful with the terminology, but try.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's so much even bigger than masculine and feminine, isn't it? It's just being an evolved human, really, and getting away from all of those stereotypes. Like you said, men do, make money, be successful, right? Take care of people, be the breadwinner. I mean, there's so much of that old energy. And it's funny because I had a breathwork session for myself, and just a couple weeks ago, I might have mentioned to you that toxic male energy came up in me, and it showed up as a black energy over my heart. And it was a painful and powerful session, but I felt so much joy when I finally cleared that. And I realized it was just my lineage, my ancestral energy from my family that represented a lot of the heaviness and pressures of being a man in the world. So, so I felt a huge shift. I felt an open-heartedness and a joy that was let in. And I'm curious, so how would you describe, I'm going to say evolved man, because I like that term. You can use whatever you want. What are some of the traits that this man has?
Excuse me. Well, I'm intrigued to what I would start by saying, it's allowing yourself to be all of who you can be. And that starts with an acceptance that we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. So, immediately, if we're looking at a man who says, I don't want any feminine energy, I don't want to embody any of that stuff, I'm a man and I'm tough and that's how it goes, then you're already limiting the capacity, because that can work in certain environments. It might be great on the sports field. For example, rugby used to be my game, and it was effective to be tough. It might work in the working environment at times to get stuff done, but does it work when you're sat one-to-one with your wife and she's searching for a deeper connection? She wants to experience the connection to your heart. She wants to feel you more deeply. That toughness is not necessarily so relevant there. So I look at the male archetypes, which is a concept that Carl Jung brought alive. That's to say that there's 4 parts to every man. There's a warrior who is strong, tough, brave, who gets stuff done. He's got clarity, he's got focus and determination. Then there's a lover who's in tune, who's in touch with the sensitivity, the softness, who's able to express, to emote, to connect, to love, to have compassion for his neighbour, for the people around him. The magician, then, who is able to grow, to educate, to learn, to evolve, to be creative and expressive, artistic. And then there's the king, who's able to look and to see all of those parts of him and to pull in whichever part he needs at the right time. And that's when we're our king, when we know when to be the warrior, the healthy warrior who needs to get stuff done, but when also to be the lover and soften, when to be the magician, to create, to express. And all of that is within us all. But particularly in the Western culture, I see it that we go all in, we categorize ourselves, we pigeonhole ourselves as this. This is who I am as a man. And I'm going to be that at all times, and you're never going to see another part of me because that might be a chink in my armor. And I love the archetypes to say, hey, you can still be that.
Those are powerful.
Yeah, but there's more to you too. And that's what I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, those are really powerful. I love those too. And, you know, I know from breathwork groups that I've led, I've had a lot of men come in, and at the end of it, they're like, oh my God, I haven't cried in 20 years. You know, thank you for that. I mean, and that's so true. You know, what do you, I assume like tears and release and just allowing yourself to feel is part of that energy, right? And just being authentic in your own feelings. How have you experienced that, or how have you seen, you know, men who go through a process like this? What changes for them?
Oh, it's a really beautiful question. It's something I'd really love to share, actually, because in some of the men's work that I've done, I've been associated with a beautiful men's retreat called Men Without Masks, where stereotypically,
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a beautiful name, isn't it? But it attracts very, very warrior-like men. You know, the ex-professional sportsmen, special forces, policemen. These men who have lived a very tough life where they've had to strip away their emotion. There hasn't been space for it. And you see them turn up on the first day, kind of arms crossed, staring at the phone, not interacting with other people. You can almost hear their thoughts saying, what the hell am I doing here? You know, I could be in the pub with my mates. It would be way easier. And they kind of shuffle their way in. And it's a 5-day experience. And as the retreat unfolds, you start to see the lover within them. You start to see the magician. You start to see all this part, and by the end of it, there's a softness to them. And they can't wait to express their love finally to their kids, to their wife, to let their wife see more of them, to give in to them, surrender into the gentleness that's always been there, but they've had to wear this mask because that's who they've had to be. That's who they've been pigeonholed as. That's how they've had to be to evolve in their career. And finally, they're allowed. They've given themselves permission, or they've been in a safe enough space to have permission to express all of who they are. And that's liberating. It's like there's a lightness to you when you're like, hey, I can be this now. I don't have to pretend anymore. It's freedom, it's lightness. And so, yes, seeing that in men, it's given me so much belief that every man has got this softness inside of them. I don't care who you are. I don't care how tough you are. I'm not taking any of that away, but there is also more to you too that I would love to see, and you'll be more free when you allow for that to be there.
That's super emotional. It makes me emotional just, you know, that process. If each man, you know, could do their own work, how different would the world be right now as well?
Yeah, it really would. It's so pertinent right now, isn't it? You know, I would love, and I've never seen a man not experience beautiful things through this process. It might sound challenging, but and initially they might be like, no, not for me. But I've never seen someone go through the process or do this work and not be grateful for doing it.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the money piece? Because I think, you know, as men, I know me definitely, and many men I've worked with, the you know, being breadwinner, making a lot of money, working hard, taking action, right? Goals, very, very masculine traits. how do we do that and still, almost be surrendered as well? I guess it's about a balance, but I'm curious how you would talk about work, money, goals, action.
Absolutely. Well, that's the warrior energy, if you like. This is the, and absolutely, and it's really important, and that we can't live in a world where we just be, we just let everything happen around us and trust the universe. That there has to be taking action. We have to do. So again, it comes back to this recognition that we can be all of it. We can be the man who goes and makes stuff happen at work, but we don't have to bring that persona with us home. We can leave that. We can be more, and we can be interchangeable. We don't have to be rigid and structured in that, closed-minded in that this is who I believe I am, and I need to be this at all times. There's so much freedom and liberation in knowing that there's a warrior, a magician, a lover, and a king in you, and that's natural, because it's tiring, it's draining, playing the same role the whole time. It's not who we are. There's more to us than that. So it's just that acceptance, really, in leaning into the fact that, yeah, sure, that's a part of you, and goal setting is important, and taking action is important, but so too is expressing your love. So too is allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to create, and vulnerable enough to dance and to move, or whatever else that comes up for you. That's all part of you as well.
It's beautifully said. I'm just curious, if a lot of these men who are called to your work, I would assume that there's probably a lot of self-criticism or possibly being really hard on themselves, and I could be wrong, but I can only relate from personal experience. So that feels like if we're hard on ourselves, if we push ourselves, then we're going to get things done. And I think, would you agree that a lot of this journey is really just going inward? Forget about our spouse and our kids, and really just learning to be more gentle with ourselves, more accepting of where we're at, and embracing that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much healing and compassion. I think it starts at that place. Whilst we're still full of shame, we don't want to go there. We'll continue to bury that. And the compassion allows us to let go of the shame, to let go of the fact that we've lived as a warrior or whatever it is. We've pigeonholed ourselves as this person for so long, and we've never allowed all of us to be expressed. To not blame ourselves, to not carry the weight of I could have done better, or I'm a bad person because I've been this, or I've made these mistakes. To actually understand that, wow, like, who taught us any of this stuff? I'm aware of this stuff, and for 30 years I lived in a different way. Is that my fault? Did I choose to be that way? Did I just not know any better? As soon as we can find that compassion and let go of the shame that keeps us stuck and buried and hidden, then the journey's beginning. It's like, okay, now we can start to play with this, to move this, to go beyond it, because there's an acceptance of it, that it's there, and we want to move beyond it now. So compassion is the starting place, I'd say. Yeah.
Would you say compassion sort of offsets some of the shame?
Yeah, compassion is the antidote, I'd say, to shame. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely. And I think for me, not to judge anyone, but it's when we've really integrated in this work, then there is so much compassion within us for everyone's journey. We can see the pain everywhere and everyone, including ourselves still. Yeah. And it's never to make someone wrong, but just to see the journey that they're on. That maybe we could have been unfortunate enough to go on. It's people, we don't choose our paths. We don't choose our parents. We don't choose our upbringing. We don't choose where we're born. There's so many experiences that we don't choose that can shape us. I always, if you don't mind, I'd love to quickly refer to a friend of mine, Michael Maisie, who I often speak about, who at 15 was arrested for armed robbery. And he was in and out of prison for many things, including attempted murder. And society, deemed him a bad person, understandably, very understandably. He did bad things. There's no denying that, and I'm not condoning anything he did. When we look back and understand that he was born to an alcoholic mother and a heroin addict father, and at 4 he was sexually abused by his uncle, then you can understand at 5 that he saw the world in a pretty dark and dangerous way. And the perspective that he took on was, I can either sit in this place and be in pain for the rest of my life and suffer in this experience of no trust in anyone around me, or I can fight my way to the top and find some safety in at least being king of the castle. And obviously, I can't condone what he did and his experiences, but you can start to understand his journey. He's now winning awards from the police for the rehabilitation work he's doing in prisons. He's holding men's retreats. He's helping people through addictions. His heart is so alive. He's a beautiful father to two amazing daughters. And he's always had that pure heart. It's always been in there inside of him. But the world told him he needs to be something else because of his experiences. Who am I to judge him for his behaviour in that time when, if I went through the same thing, there's every chance I would have behaved in the same way. So that level of compassion, I think, and acceptance that we're all doing the best with what we know.
It's such a beautiful and inspiring story. And it's a great example of somebody taking the challenges, and those were big challenges, and using them as his gift to help others.
Yeah. I always come back, sorry, I have to share, I always come back to this quote that says, your wound is not your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. And he took on that responsibility, as you say.
I love that so much. I always like to say your pain is your power too. Once we can move through it to the other side and just begin to observe, then it becomes a superpower that we get to, to use to help others. So, and it sounds like, that is exactly what you're doing too.
It's so true for me, Joe. Yeah, because I have so much passion around this to share and to voice this, because of the pain I had of repressing myself and living with that repression and denying who I really was and experiencing the emptiness of the disconnect to my emotions, and all of that means that I'm so passionate. I want to express this. I want to stand on stage. I want to help others. And without that, I don't know if I'd have the passion. I'd be like, yeah, of course, well, whatever. Like everyone's on their own thing. But that pain is what makes me so passionate to be here.
Right, and you were able to move through a lot of that, and it's possible. So you have belief, you have trust in the process, and it's kind of become your mission, it seems, as well, which is so amazing.
Yeah, it has become my mission. And when we soften and listen, like you say, to our pain, our mission can come out of that, our purpose. That's what we can be here to do. Yeah.
And it sure is exhausting wearing a mask. Isn't it? Let's face it. It's exhausting. Over the years, been to numerous healers, and one of the things that came up a lot was, there's a mask. You're wearing a mask, right? And, at the time, I was like, what are you talking about? But as we evolve and grow, we realize, we're probably always taking off masks because, the work is never done. But it all makes sense. It all makes sense that we're hiding out to stay safe, I think, to feel protected. Because I can imagine this work, especially with men who haven't, who are new to it, I think it must feel a little bit unsafe. Is that fair to say?
It's a threat to their identity. It's like they've spent years cultivating this identity of how to protect themselves, how to appear validated and appreciated in society or accepted, and suddenly we're saying, hey, you can be a different way, and there's a part of them that says, absolutely not. I've fought for ages. I've conditioned myself to be this way so I can stay safe. The last thing I want to do is change.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Fought. That's the key word right there. Warrior.
Yeah.
Fight or flight. A lot of fight or flight in that.
Yeah, and that's where the surrender comes in. It's like, okay, what if we stop fighting? What if we surrender into what we're actually truly feeling? Like beneath all this, the mask, beneath everything's fine, what actually really are you experiencing? And for me, it was emptiness, like a lack of purpose, a lack of connection, like a lack of feeling alive. What is this all about? It feels like there's something more to life. And I think there's a lot of men in that space. Until we learn to connect with our emotions, there's always going to be something missing, because quite literally there is. The emotions are a big part of us. We're meant to experience them, and we've conditioned ourselves by accident, no blame, but to stop feeling, to numb ourselves, to get our pleasures in instant gratification, and
in the outside world, right?
Outside,
quick fix.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's easy. If we earn enough money, we can keep buying that stuff. But is it really nourishing us? If we're really honest, Do we really
Yeah.
feel fulfilled? This is the difference for me between happiness and fulfillment. There's a lot of people who can buy happiness, but do they really feel fulfilled? Like, happiness is very temporary. It's an emotion. It can come and go. But what about a sense of fulfillment that's more permanent inside of you? It's a kind of healthy template for you to build the rest of your life on. What about that? And that's what I think we're missing.
I love that. I think there is an awakening that happens when we start to realize, many of us, that nothing from the outside can fill us, you know? And it's disappointing at first. I know I was disappointed. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not even getting any pleasure from sex anymore. What is going on here? And, you know, and shopping and spending. And but that's a wonderful realization, because we realize it is an inside job. And so I could talk about this all day. And we will have more conversations about this. And I so appreciate who you are in the world. I have a few questions that I want to end the podcast with. And the first question is, what brings you the most joy in your life?
Oh, it's a beautiful question, Jay. I want to answer intuitively what just comes to me. I'm going to say it's human connection. You know, it's conversations like this that fill me up. When I leave this conversation, I feel seen. I feel alive. I feel connected. I feel on purpose. It's that fills me up. Yeah. So really, like, I live for these experiences. I live for this.
That's beautiful. And what do you love most about yourself?
Oh, I love that question.
I knew you would.
Goodness. You know what? I love the journey that I've been on. I love the fact that I've embraced this whole experience and that I've allowed myself to soften and to become who I really am. I think it's rare. And I love the authenticity that brings me, the vulnerability that allows me to express, the freedom it gives me. So yeah, I just love my whole journey. I'm grateful to myself that I've been vulnerable enough to risk the judgment, because I've been judged a lot, you know, in doing this work. It's not
Sure.
It's not easy for everyone to get their heads around.
Yeah.
So, but it's worth it for how I feel on the inside, however anyone else judges me. So yeah, I'm just grateful I found the strength to go on that journey.
Love that. And my last question is, what's your definition of healing?
My definition of healing is to become more of who you really are, like who you really are.
Oh,
that's
yes.
the journey. And the more true we are, the more we uncover the layers of truth of who we really are, the more free we are. And I think most of us need healing because we're being who we should be, not who we really are. And we're lost in that space, and we're disconnected, and we're not in love with ourselves. And from that place, life is hard. It's a difficult place to live in. So yeah, healing is uncovering yourself.
That's beautiful. And I have the need to just tell you that you, in our short time communicating, have helped me. Because when I meet a man like you, you inspire me. And it makes me feel safer in the world too, you know, with all of my upbringing around that tough male energy. So thank you. Seriously, thank you for that.
Well, Jay, it's beautiful. Thank you. I that really means a lot. And actually, one thing, sorry to go on, one thing I would have, if you push me for another thing that I love about myself, it's the fact that I've learned to allow people just to be who they are, because I don't want to judge anyone, and I know how painful it is to not be able to be yourself. So I really want to, when I'm with people, I want to sit in a space where I'm like, hey, I want to just be you with me. Like, there's no judgment. Like, I want to see you, I want to feel you, and that's where connection lies for me. So it's really beautiful for me to receive that from you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Purely transparent energy. I love that.
Mm.
Yeah. So tell others who are listening how they can find you, websites, social media, anything you want to share.
Oh, thank you, Jay. Yeah. I go by the name of The Naked Professor on Instagram. That might change. I just want to be Ben Bidwell, if I'm honest. But I started it at a time when everyone had some catchy name, you know.
That's a whole nother podcast right there. I want to know about that one.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, a lot of what I've spoken about is about fundamentally like becoming naked, like letting go of the mask,
Yes,
and bearing your soul.
yes.
So that's where it came from. But yeah, the Naked Professor on Instagram, and then my website is benbidwell.com, and yeah, and this is the work I do, is to help people reconnect with who they really are, so they can feel more free.
That's amazing. Well, I hope people will reach out and learn more. And I have loved this conversation. Thank you for taking the time to share with us.
Oh, Jay, I've loved it too. Thank you for holding the space and allowing me to express.
You're welcome. And thanks everyone for listening.